Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark.
It looks like the WNBA is about to blow up. However, what if a well-thought-out transfer that has the potential to permanently alter the league is causing the true seismic shift rather than a single player? Disregard your preconceived notions about super teams, as a new roster blueprint for 2026 has surfaced. It centers around Caitlin Clark and an unexpected co-star, which is brilliant. This lineup is more than simply a fantasy one. Someone like Stephen A. Smith would be shouting from the rooftops about this concept. The rest of the league would be shocked by such a strong team. We are discussing a roster structure that would make general managers in the NBA envious. A chemistry experiment that maximizes each and every possession by pairing the league's top offensive player with complementary pieces. The Golden State Warriors became a dynasty because to this team-building philosophy, which also made the Miami Heat's Big Three period television must-watch. However, the ramifications are enormous, and this time it's taking place in the WNBA. There is just one indisputable truth that forms the basis of this empire. The proper circumstances must be in place for Caitlin Clark, a generational talent, to reach her maximum championship potential. Not merely Caitlin Clark's incredible range is at the core of this basketball powerhouse. It's her collaboration with Sophie Cunningham, one of the league's fiercest rivals. Cunningham is the tough enforcer, a player who provides the unrelenting energy and defensive fire that every championship team requires, while Clark is the offensive artist. Imagine Cunningham locking down the greatest player on the opposing squad as Clark drains logos. It's the ideal balance of fight and flair. A team that covers the court from all sides and gives opponents nightmares. Points aren't the only goal here. It's about laying a solid foundation. But let's examine in more detail why this combination works so well. Caitlin Clark excels in the space, creating her famous deep three-point shots with ball screens and off-ball movement. She wants players who can play excellent defense so she can save energy on that end of the court and attack with explosiveness. Sophie Cunningham is quite helpful in this situation. Cunningham does more than simply defend. She sets the tone. This is the type of player that enjoys ruining her opponent's evening. She fights over the top, battles past screens, and disrupts offensive rhythm with her body. In addition to defense, Cunningham contributes toughness and seasoned leadership. She has participated in intense playoff matches. She has experienced elimination situations and has never given up on a challenge. You want players like Cunningham on your team when the stakes are high and the lights are brightest. Players who don't back down from a moment, but instead embrace it. She would be the ideal seasoned presence to support Clark as he navigates the demanding process of managing a stellar squad. The bond between a defensive bulldog like Cunningham and a courageous shooter like Clark would foster an outstanding culture throughout the team. However, that was only the start of this crazy roster. The relation to Stephen A. Smith. Right now, you can just hear Stephen A. Smith fervently stating that the WNBA needs this kind of maneuver during first take. This lineup is a vibrant interpretation. A daring forecast that will rule headlines and titles for years to come. He enjoys promoting this type of power move. Unquestionably clever, provocative, and disruptive. He would describe it as an evolution that the league needed. A strategy for producing the kind of must-watch television that propels the WNBA to new heights. You will realize why when you view the remaining components of this puzzle. With his trademark fervor, Stephen A. would dissect this squad, pointing to the camera and claiming that it is precisely what the WNBA needs to compete for public attention. He would contend that casual sports fans tune in to watch greatness, to watch teams that dominate and make bold statements. Consider the surge in viewership during the height of the Warriors' success or the formation of the Miami Heat Superteam by LeBron James. Viewership is driven by controversy, and revenue is driven by viewership. Appointment television would be this WNBA powerhouse team. Basketball is a must-see that appeals to a wider audience. He would most likely launch into one of his renowned tirades about how the league has been anticipating this day. How the entrance of Caitlin Clark presented the ideal chance to create something unique that would come to characterize a whole era. Stephen A. would stress that the goal here is not to undermine the balance of competition. The goal is to increase awareness of the league as a whole. Everyone gains when one team turns into an appointment viewing team. When this great squad visits the area, rival teams draw larger crowds. Highlight reels go viral. The league's cultural influence grows rapidly. Best of all, other teams would have to react, forming their own super teams and raising the bar for competition. This is the way to create a meaningful league. A league that is well known and respected across the country. Other important players that would make this squad practically unbeatable would join Clark and Cunningham in this hypothetical 2026 roster. Imagine having one outstanding shooter to spread the floor even more and a dominant post player to control the paint, giving Clark several open looks. Key free agents and rising talents who would put chasing a ring above all else would be the front office's aim. It would be more than just a team. It would consist of a group of basketball killers, each with a distinct function within a system intended to cause complete destruction. Let's discuss roster construction in more detail. You would want a center that can create deadly screens, defend the rim, and rebound at a high level. Someone with the strength to fight at the post yet the mobility to pivot to defense, like Brianna Jones. It would not be necessary for this player to be the main scorer. Doing the grunt work, building an internal presence, and generating second chances are what make them valuable. This center would thrive on offensive rebounds and putbacks when Clark draws double teams on the perimeter. A dynamic defender who can guard several positions and make corner threes would be your objective at power forward. Imagine a player like A.J. Wilson or Breanna Stewart who can provide switchability on defense and stretch the floor on offense. With the ability to pound with posts in the paint or defend wings on the perimeter, this guy would be essential in today's positionless game. Since it keeps defenders honest and stops them from sagging off to assist on Clark, being able to shoot from a distance would be crucial. Another guard or wing who can handle the ball, generate their own shot, and relieve pressure on Clark as a secondary playmaker would be the last piece. Someone who can help in transition, attack closeouts, and add another scoring threat so that defenses can't concentrate only on stopping Clark. In order to know when to be aggressive and when to feed Clark for big shots, this player would need to have a high basketball IQ. These 5 players' synergy would be based on sacrifice. They would all be prepared to put the success of the team ahead of their own individual stats. However, a club with this much talent would undoubtedly face significant criticism. The murmurs would begin at once. How was it possible for one team to bring together so much talent? What sort of backroom transactions took place? Who took advantage of the reductions, and why? Not everyone would be cheering, and the story would write itself. The reaction. There would be an immediate and severe backlash as soon as this lineup was made public. Rival team supporters would scream and accuse the league of permitting a talent monopoly that would undermine the balance of competition. The media would be embroiled in a contentious dispute. Does this type of super team represent the sports ethos, or is it beneficial for business? With this team acting as the antagonist in every venue they enter, every game would be a championship-level pressure cooker. From the very first tip, they would have a bullseye on their backs. Hot takes and emotional emotions would be exploding on social media. Fans would be comparing this move to Kevin Durant joining the Warriors on Twitter, accusing it of being unfair or weak. Fans would analyze every facet of the roster creation in Reddit discussions, concocting intricate conspiracy theories around recruitment and manipulation. Whether this super team is beneficial to the WNBA or embodies all that is wrong with contemporary professional sports would be the subject of lengthy segments on sports talk radio. Purists of traditional basketball would mourn the demise of natural team formation while reflecting on past mistakes. They would use teams like the Spurs or the pre-KD Warriors as models of how to create a champion when players stayed with one team their whole careers and established dynasties through the draft. According to these detractors, super teams produce dull, predictable products with fixed results before the season even starts. If opposing team supporters already know they will lose, why would they attend games? This is where things become fascinating, though. The criticism itself would be included into the narrative, drawing even more interest and viewers. People would watch in the hopes that the best team would lose, and they would cheer for the underdogs to pull off incredible upsets. All losses would be magnified and examined. Every dispute got bigger. These elite athletes would be under tremendous strain. It would be a disastrous disaster if they didn't win a title. They would be doing more than just hoops. Every choice they made would be closely examined, and every error would be captured on highlight reels. And everyone would be shocked by what transpired next. The pressure, the egos, the human factor. Success is not usually the result of these elements. Super teams that collapsed spectacularly because to the pressure of expectations are common in history. The cost of assembling this much skill is enormous. One that would force the WNBA to pay its highest wage cap. Some of these stars would need to make a decision in order to make it work. For a surefire chance at a dynasty, take a lower salary or take the max contract elsewhere. The plot would take on a completely new dimension as a result of this financial turmoil, which would reveal the egos and sacrifices required to assemble a contemporary super team. This is a risky bet that might result in a historic championship run or collapse due to its own ambition. Let's examine the figures. Building a super squad is made even more difficult by the WNBA's far more stringent wage cap system than the NBA's. In the complex jigsaw of roster building, maximum contracts, supermax deals, and veteran minimum pay all play a part. At least one or two top players would have to accept far less than their market value in order for this super team to succeed. Intriguing dynamics and possible points of friction result from this. Considering her marketability and on-court performance, picture Caitlin Clark as the franchise's star player, demanding a maximum salary that she deserves. Sophie Cunningham would now have to settle for a lesser contract than she could fetch on the open market, even though she was essential to the team's defensive identity. Similar choices would need to be made by the flexible forward and the post player. Would they give up millions to win a championship? How long before anger grows as a result of that sacrifice? Additionally, there is the issue of sponsorship opportunities and revenue sharing. Being a member of a super squad raises your profile and may result in more lucrative endorsement deals that make up for the lower pay. Players may figure that playing with Caitlin Clark will increase their chances of being selected for all-star teams, appearing on national television, and eventually earning more money from outside sources. Every athlete and their agent would have to carefully weigh the intricate financial calculations. If such a system is in place or is used in the WNBA, it will have consequences for luxury taxes in addition to player pay. For the pleasure of assembling this much talent, the franchise ownership would have to pay penalties and spend far more over the wage ceiling. Not all WNBA owners are as dedicated or have the same resources. This implies that only specific franchises, those in bigger markets with more affluent ownership groups, would even be able to employ this tactic. That in and of itself calls into question the ability of small market teams to compete and the balance of competition. During the off-season and into the regular season, the financial story would take center stage in the headlines. There would be press conferences, justifications, and discussions regarding the reasons behind each player's signing with this elite squad for less than market value. Was winning truly so important to them? Or did something else come into play? Basketball's business would grow to be just as interesting as the sport itself. This 2026 super team would alter more than just the championship race if it were to ever come to be. The WNBA's DNA would be irrevocably changed. Stars would openly recruit one another to build formidable lineups, ushering in a new era of player empowerment and movement. In response, other teams would have to create their own super squads or come up with ingenious new strategies to compete. The hunters and the hunted would make up the league. And the struggle for dominance would be fiercer than ever. Consider the repercussions for the entire league. Smaller market clubs would have to be more inventive, maybe concentrating on top-tier coaching, cutting-edge offensive and defensive plans, or selecting young, inexpensive players in the draft. Teams that prioritize player development, such as the Indiana Fever or Connecticut Sun, may design their systems to optimize the potential of underutilized prospects. They would emerge as the quintessential underdog tails, competing against teams with greater individual skill through system basketball and excellent coaching. In reaction, other large markets would attempt to put together their own super squads. To counter this, picture the New York Liberty or the Las Vegas Aces forming a super team by aggressively recruiting several talents. With teams continuously deciding whether to bet on winning now or rebuild for the future, the league would engage in arms race. It would become impossible to maintain a competitive but mediocre middle ground. Either you'd be in full rebuild mode or a contender for a title. There would be a significant rise in player movement. Players may ask for trades more regularly in an attempt to join contenders or form teams with their buddies rather than sticking to their contracts and waiting for free agency. With players aggressively recruiting one another via social media, text messaging, and public declarations, the buddy ball era would reach unprecedented heights. Player liberty and desires would trump organizational loyalty, radically altering the conventional franchise-player relationship. In negotiations for collective bargaining, the WNBA Players Association would have a lot more clout. The union could make the case for greater wage caps, better benefits, and better working conditions since that players are showing that they are prepared to accept lower compensation for winning circumstances. While negotiating this new player empowerment environment, the league would have to figure out how to maintain the satisfaction of all parties involved, players, owners, and fans. Streaming services and television networks would also be quite important. A Caitlin Clark-led superteam would be a ratings goldmine, resulting in better broadcast contracts and more media attention for the league as a whole. Future pay caps may increase as a result, which would be advantageous to all players. Even if some boats became much more opulent than others, the rising tide would lift them all. The effect would also be seen by youth basketball. These super teams would inspire young females to build their own dominating squads with their buddies. AAU basketball may change tactics by aggressively enlisting several top players to play together, replicating the idea of a super squad at the local level. Similar patterns would be seen in college basketball, when top prospects would freely discuss which colleges let them collaborate with other outstanding players. Is this startling 2026 roster the WNBA's doomsday scenario? Is it a risky notion that might backfire and turn the league into a league of giants and everyone else, or is a super squad centered around Caitlin Clark destined to exist and transform the league as we know it? The discussion is just beginning, but the framework is there. Who will have the courage to construct it is the only question that remains. You may be surprised by the response. Despite possessing the means and capacity, some general managers may be reluctant to use this strategy out of concern for the criticism and pressure it would cause. Others may rise to the occasion, seeing it as their legacy move, the choice that will determine their franchise and career. Ownership groups will discuss in boardrooms the possible return on investment in terms of championships and cultural significance, as well as the cash outlay. Caitlin Clark herself will play a major role. Would she rather create something naturally or serve as the spokesperson for a super team? A new generation of WNBA players may be motivated by her choice to reevaluate their winning strategies, careers, and legacies. Player empowerment and aggressive roster building will be validated if she adopts the super squad concept and it is successful. If she takes a different route, it could halt this trend and maintain a more conventional method of team development. This genie cannot be put back in the bottle. The conversation has already started. The concept of WNBA super teams is now deeply ingrained in the thoughts of players, executives, and fans, regardless of whether this precise roster materializes or not. The league must make a decision that will determine its identity for the ensuing 10 years, putting it at a crossroads. Will it welcome the spectacle and drama of super teams? Or will it figure out how to keep the competition balanced and stop any one franchise from controlling the market? There is no turning back once players experience this degree of empowerment, according to history. This particular Caitlin Clark super squad may not be part of the WNBA's future, but it will most likely involve more aggressive player movement, more strategic roster building, and increased debate about team building tactics. Whether or if change is imminent is not the question. The question is whether the league is prepared for such a drastic adjustment. The 2026 season is almost approaching. Right now, front offices are making choices that could change the WNBA's history. Star players are talking to agents about their aspirations, futures, and willingness to make compromises. Somewhere, a general manager is thinking about whether they have the guts to take the trigger while drawing together a roster that's strangely like the one we've detailed. The basketball world is watching, the pieces are moving, and the stage is set. Will this super team ever be built, or will it just be a fascinating hypothetical situation? One thing is certain, but only time will tell. Nothing will be the same in the WNBA.